This is episode 72 of Vertical Pursuit. By the way, you can check us out on the Vertical Pursuit website, which is it's a .org, isn't it?
Yep, .org.
Verticalpursuit.org, and go on the app. And then, I keep getting guys asking about gear.
Yeah.
Hats.
Yes.
Are you shaping up that store, or what's going on?
Yeah. We are, right now, it should be updated this week with some new stuff on there. And they are sending me the catalogs for hats and Carhartt stuff. So hopefully we'll get all that stuff dialed in. And then Mike and I are working on a plan for probably maybe in the future. We're working on some other options too. But for right now, you can go on there right now. There's some gear on there for sure. They just sent me an email last week that the new stuff should be uploading. And then pretty quick after that, hopefully we'll have some Carhartt, some hats, all that kind of stuff.
Because I was wearing, because you've gotten, I had a Kuyu vest on with the VP. Somebody at church was like, wait a minute, you guys have Kuyu gear? And I said, well, yes, but, so, it's very cool. And like we always say, it's a great conversation starter. But then at the Wednesday night thing we've been going to, which is going through the book Vintage Masculinity. By the way, you should put that on this VP store.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's going on Amazon, right?
It'll go on, we were trying to get it on Amazon. It'll be sold on a website called Blurb. Blurb is who actually produces the book, and they have their own hosting. It's actually easier. So you basically just go straight. Once that's up, we'll kind of announce how to get there, but it'll be on Blurb. They are a print house that prints the book. And so basically you can just go there and order directly from them.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we're working on right now.
And a couple of weeks ago,
but they're available at the church. And so
for people who are listening outside the area.
Yeah, if you're listening outside the area, just go to the contact us on the website or the app and connect with us. You can just find that. Just email us and we'll make sure we can ship one out to you.
And books, what, $20?
Yep.
Okay. And I know that you launched this book formally a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you had 500 some copies and planned that would get you through a couple of services, and they were gone.
Yep.
I mean, I saw lines of people, and everybody's talking about it.
We sold out, but we just ordered, I think, another 400. So they're available right now at the church. You can swing by any day, or you can email us through the website. Let us know that you're interested, and we'll mail one out to you.
Do you remember? It's probably been 3 or 4 weeks. Did your power go out
here at the house?
Yeah.
Because
we live.
It blipped. It didn't go
mine went out.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah,
why? What happened?
Somebody, I don't know what they said it was. Somebody hit. I don't know if it was a power pole thing or somebody told me what it was. Because our power's never got it. We had that massive ice storm a couple winters ago, and everybody's power is out because trees were falling all like mad. Ours never went out, so ours had never gone out, but it did. And the reason I bring that up is I was thinking about it, and I was going to tell you about it that day. So I'm in the middle of a Zoom call, and I'm still working on that. I work on the Major League Baseball project, and I'm in this pretty important Zoom call, and it was just weird because the whole house, boom, gone. I mean, gone, everything. Thankfully, my phone, still had battery power, and cell phone towers were okay. So I was back up.
Did your Zoom call drop?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was on the computer. Was it
running through your...
I was on the computer, on my desktop.
Yeah, so you're toast.
So everything just went gone. But it was what was weird to me is, and it took about an hour. They had said the estimate, because my neighbors started texting me, what's going on? And I said, I don't know. And then I was finding out that it was a pretty widespread part of the area that went down. But after and there's things you forget about. You become conditioned, obviously, to the lifestyles we lead and how many conveniences we have.
Jeez.
And so I'm kind of bored. My phone still works, so I'm still messing around with that. And so I have something to occupy our minds that are perpetually occupied or needing to be occupied. But then after about a half an hour and the house was quiet, and I think I was the only one home, I went and kind of walked around the kitchen. You open the fridge, the light doesn't come on. There's literally, it's dead silent. Nothing's running. But I'm looking around at stuff in the kitchen, and I'm equating it to kind of like I'm thinking like I Am Legend, Will Smith, the movie, of everything being gone. And what struck me was, and I know this is silly, but I was looking around thinking about how useless all of this stuff is without power, and how long it would take. And you and I both read a lot, listen to a lot of stuff, apocalypse stuff. We always think about, there's like preppers, and there's stuff that, what if this happens? What are you going to do? What do you really need? Generator, water, canned food. And I've never really I've thought about it, and I've started to kind of, well, maybe I'll buy an extra case of water at Costco. I don't know. That's probably as far as I've gone with my prepping. By the way, there's a store in Prineville called Prepper Up,
which is store. The best store in the world.
We go in there. That place, man, that's where you go if you want to prep. But the funny part with the prepping thing, and if you're into prepping, it's fine. I start going down that road, and I'm like, where does it end? And then I'll look at something that I prep for, and I go, well, if I don't have that, I mean, am I really going to last more than a few weeks anyway, even if I have all this? And I get off the grid people, and I've got friends who have massive propane tank and chickens, and they could last.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point in that was, and this kind of I'm getting early to what we kind of wanted to talk about. The feeling that I had at that moment, and it's a very uncomfortable feeling for me, and for a lot of guys, I would assume, a lot of people, is how little control we have over things like that. And when something like your power goes out, I'm standing there going, and I'm feeling tiny at that moment. Yeah. Where normally I'm feeling like big and in power, and I got the computer, and I got a game on in this room, and I got the other college game on in my office, and I got fire going, and I got some tools running out in the garage, and everything's great. When you lose that one, you lose electricity, all of a sudden I'm sitting here going, what am I going to do now? And everything around me that I've spent money on is meaningless because there's nothing there. So
100%.
For me, it struck me in something that I'm really bad at anyway, and that is the anxiety or the nervousness of things I can't control. And I think for a lot of people, and I was talking to a friend about this a couple of nights ago, he said his struggle too is controlling the uncontrollable.
Yeah.
And the battle the illusion that we are in control. I mean, and this is a generic, basic question when it comes to not only humans, but to Christians. And when our circumstances start going in the wrong direction, that we are controlled by the truth that we actually have very little control. And then the illusion of our control gets filled with anxiety. So how do we manage the anxiety, and how do we come to grips with the idea that we think we have control, we really don't have any control? That was his question to me, and that's something I wanted to get your take on in this episode.
I love how you started with the prepper stuff.
Yeah,
because that's
what I thought. That's what I thought about.
That's exactly it. Because
what went through my mind when the power went out is, and this is how our brains work. We're under attack, man.
I know
somebody blew it up. We've been hacked.
Hey, I know that, and that's the.
And when it's actually Grandpa backed into a power pole down the street. That was the answer. And I had these visions of I'm looking at the sky for Chinese fighter jets. I'm like, we're toast.
Red Dawn. It's Red Dawn.
We're going to be parachuters coming down. And I said, no, dude he backed into a power pole behind his shop and knocked the neighborhood out.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even know you were going to bring, when we started this episode, I know where we're going with the control question. I didn't know you were going to bring up the prepper stuff. But because I relate to that, because I've done a lot of prepper stuff and did it. Yeah,
because you have a bug out bag and everything, right?
I'm ready to go, man. I'm ready to go.
Where are you going?
I know. Well, that's okay. We'll get to the question, but that's an aside, because the quick of it is, I tell people all the time, is that and this is actually a good segue, your feeling of out of controlness is, I think, rooted in everything we are around life. We fear not having control of our spouses, fear not having control of our jobs, our income, anything that threatens security and safety makes us a control freak. At the end of the day, we are wired for part of human need is safety, security around our families, around our kids, around our hearts, and so anything that threatens that just freaks us out. And then what we do, we grasp for control. We grasp for any control mechanism that we can get, although we realize from time to time that do we really have control? How much of that's an illusion? And so prepping is about mitigating fear. And I think at the end of control issues, control is all about, it's how we handle and manage fear. That's really
true.
what control comes down to.
That's true, because that makes sense then. Because that makes sense why I'm so weak and so bad at this is because I'm fear-based.
Yeah, me too.
My shame.
Totally. So like with prepping things, so I remember when I grew up in Southern California, we were told to have a house kit buy for earthquakes. So if you get stuck in an earthquake, you've got some water, you got some gloves, some tools to help you with that. That was actually, when we talk about fear, there's irrational fear, and then there's just wisdom type fear. So I'll ask somebody, do you have life insurance? Yeah. Well, why do you have life insurance? Well, are you everyday paranoid that you're going to die? That's a different type of fear versus one is about wisdom, a preparation for a circumstance. Or do you have car insurance? Yeah. Why? Do you live every day with the fear you're going to get in a car wreck? That's irrational fear. That's a different thing. But you have life insurance or car insurance because with the chance, and you almost don't even think about it. You tuck it away. Oh yeah, I got car insurance. And you don't even think about it until you pay for it. It's the same with some of the prepping stuff. You put your little kit together for an earthquake. When I lived in Canada, we lived in a town that was an hour away from the nearest city. And so you would have to drive in the middle of winter an hour and 15 minutes through farmland to get to the city. Well, oftentimes back then we didn't have cell phones. So when I was in high school, part of driver's education was outfitting your car in the trunk with a few items in case you ran out of gas or your car broke down.
In Canada, you're dead.
And that happened to us. I will never forget when I had a car, my dad and I, we were driving to the city, beautiful sunny morning, but it was also minus 25. And we were driving, and all of a sudden smoke just starts coming from the hood. I pull over, I pop the hood, now there's flames. And our engine's on fire. So I'm grabbing snow, putting out the fire. Well, the engine's toast. Car won't start. It was an electrical fire, so it won't start. And I look at my dad. I'm like, well, we gotta walk to the nearest farm, which was 2 miles away. Let me just tell you, 2 miles at minus 25. If you're not bundled up and all that, you think you can just roll around in a windbreaker or something like that, you will get hypothermia and frostbite.
That's crazy.
And I remember getting to this farmhouse, and I couldn't move my hands. It was like there's a level right before you get to frostbite. There's this intense pain. But frostbite, when you stop feeling the pain, it's because the nerves are dead. That's not good. So you still want to feel the pain. But anyways, point of that being is you throw some stuff in your car. Some blankets, jumper cables, maybe a heater, something like that. That's normal stuff. We've gotten so accustomed to convenience in our society around, especially electrical stuff. I mean, think about this. The power goes out, your fridge goes out.
Oh, everything.
Like, what are you going to do with all the food you got?
Because I was feeling like a big man when we went out and we went elk hunting. And I said to people, I'm controlling my own sustenance. So I went out and well, then the power went out. I'm like, okay, day or two, that elk's toast. It's in my freezer in the garage. What am I going to do now?
Exactly. And we're not in a cold enough environment. You throw it in the snow, it's going to rot. Right. It's toast. So within 2 days, you're out of food. And, nobody's going to DoorDash, and we have become so convenience oriented. We've lost the art of some level of self-reliance. And that, I think, could backfire. And we could do a whole thing on, preparing for cyber attacks. Those are always potential.
And isn't it funny how these days the people who have come under attack by the establishment are those who are becoming self-sufficient. They hate it.
They hate it. And that'll be a fun podcast for us because, it's funny when you came over here before we went on air and we filmed a whole other episode. So this is the second one we're recording today. Just you and I just hanging out here. We were talking about politics and government and it's true. There are people that are in government. This will be for another podcast, but because I want to get back to your control question. But the irony is That's what they want.
They want you.
So this is a control conversation, but there are powers that be in governments around the world, including ours, that they want to be so much in control.
Their business is creating dependence.
Yes. Every step of the way, they want you depending on them. They don't want you self-reliant or independent. And again, that's for another podcast, but that's exactly what they want. They want to control us, and the way they control us is to get us to have to be 100% dependent on them. And it's an illusion if you think that many of them are doing things for our benefit, when really it's just about continuing to get us to have to be dependent on them, and so they can control us. That's a reality.
I brought that up in a meeting one time. I probably shouldn't go here, but I was in a meeting one time downtown, and this was in the baseball project. I mean, if you listen to the podcast, it's pretty clear where I stand politically, but not necessarily. That doesn't mean I'm illogical. It just means I'm or pigheaded. But we were and somebody was talking about the homeless crisis, and somebody made the comment, "Man, they just once they get the homeless and I just made the comment. I said, "What makes you think they want to get the homeless crisis cleaned up?"
Right.
And they said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, that." Having a lot of homeless gives a lot of people jobs and is a lot of place to spend that public money. And if it goes away, those jobs go away. That dependence goes away. Anyway, I'm not going to go down the road. I suggested that because you brought up the government stuff. Yeah. And I know maybe that sounds a little crazy when you start to think about it.
Nope.
Sorry.
That's 100%. It's so funny when I talk with people about this, and I go, are you so naive to think that we have evolved in humanity that somehow we are above previous tyrannical governments, that we can somehow look through human history and go, well, we're never going to do that. That would never happen to us. And I go, yeah, you're a fool. You need some discernment, be wise, and understand that there are people who power and control is what their chief aim of life is. And if they can convince you that you think they have your best interest in mind when really they have their best interest in mind, that's what makes them so deceptive and why you have to be so discerning. But we'll talk about that more, maybe even this next week. But when you talk about the power going out, man, or let's give another analogy. Your loved one's in the hospital, and you're, gosh, I have no control over this. Oh. When Shelly had cancer.
I've talked about that story, and I was telling a friend the other day when she had breast cancer and she went in for her big surgery. I think I've talked about this on the podcast, but the torture for me was, and I'm sure there are parents or dads listening or whatever who have, the children having a child who's in a hospital or stuff you can't control and you're pacing around. That is a horrible feeling. And I had it with my wife when she was in surgery, not knowing what they were going to find. I'm just walking around, going out of my mind with the fact that I had zero control, or power over any of that stuff. And I know there's people that have it. My situation had turned out well, scary as it was. Or her situation, our situation. So I know there's so many other things out there and people who could write books on that where I can't. But for me, it was an illustration and an example in front of me. Number one, on the power of that stuff. And number two, the fact that I am really weak at it. But then one more thing that it illustrated. Did I cut you off a minute ago, by the way? You going somewhere else? Okay. And here is my weakness in it, and other people's as well, on everything. And the story I was just telling about my wife going through surgery was an example of this. I, not consciously, but kind of the way I'm wired, I think at times, if I worry enough and I think through all the possible outcomes enough, and if I let my heart gamble on the statistics I read enough, I should be able to have some control over this and handle it.
Absolutely.
And that is sound, when I hear myself say that, I sound crazy and it makes me angry, but that's what I do.
Oh my gosh, I do the same thing.
That if I apply enough worry to this,
Yep.
and worry, by the way, is very habit forming.
Oh.
So you go there, you go to worry, and this sounds, how counterintuitive does this sound? But this is how crazy it is. You go to worry as a comfort. You find your comfort in worry because you go back into that rut. And there's a lot of days when things are going well for me and things are flying high, I start to look for things to worry about.
Gosh.
Because we talked about this a little bit, I think, in the previous episode, a little bit of the self-sabotage. So when things are going really, really well, you don't necessarily blow them up, but you start worrying about illogical things because that gives you some measure of control over something that you otherwise don't have any control over. So the illusion of self-control is you can poke holes in it with self-sabotage. And that gives you at least the control.
That control thing we all wrestle with if we're honest, because I think we all wrestle with fear. I do.
Yep.
I just really struggle with fear, and especially fear of losing. I've said this before because I've met with therapists and counselors. I lost my dad when I was 22, car accident, and that was a real jolt for me because I had never gone through something like that, and at a fairly young age, 22, to lose a parent, that's pretty young. And what it made me fearful of is, oh crap, who else am I going to lose?
Yeah.
So then you become controlling, and not always in a bad way, but it does become bad because then all I'm doing is I'm obsessing over what if this happens, and what if this happens to them? What if? And I look back as a parent, and I'm so grateful by God's grace, that we have 2 kids and a son-in-law now that love Jesus and awesome. But I look back and I go, I think a lot of my parenting, if I'm honest, had some control stuff in there because of fear. And so then and then if you're not careful, you create a fear culture, which is you create an anxious culture. And
in your own family,
you
start to see it in your kids, and you go, "Oh man, they got that. They got that from me."
Oh, totally. Yeah. If I'm honest, I'm like, dang. And my wife and I have talked about that quite a bit, and which was just anxiety stuff in our family, and I know for me, it's like anything I love because you love them or it or whatever, or security, right? You want security and safety. We all want that. I think it's a human need. A human need to desire safety. So what threatens safety? Well, losing my job. That's financial safety or financial security, taking care of my family. So that becomes do you try to control people? If you're working somewhere, do you try to control the way they see you so that you can maintain their favor, which maintains the job? I mean, these are all control mechanisms that we filter through. Relationships are the same way. Are you afraid that you're going to lose somebody you love? Therefore, you can sometimes people please, or you can sometimes, get into relationships that are unhealthy because, I was dating a girl one time and was it better for me to be in a toxic relationship or better to be without someone, the fear of rejection? I mean, all those control things can sometimes keep you in a bad situation.
Well, we talked about self-sabotage.
Yeah,
That's where in relationships, a lot of the time you'll see somebody break up with the other one. Well, because I'm scared it's going to end and I might as well do it. Therefore I control it.
Absolutely. If this is going to go south, at least I'm going to be in control of it.
I'll be the guy that...
That's right. It's not you, it's me. It's definitely
no, it's me.
It's me controlling this thing. I'm going to control the outcome, and I'd rather even jump to that. And anyways, we can go down that path. Here's a quote. When we were talking this morning about what topics, listen to this quote. I thought this was so good. The problem is control is a devil's deal. And it says, they go on to say this: the more that we seek it, the more it betrays us. It's a devil's deal. The more we seek it, the more it betrays us. The reason why I was processing it as a devil's deal is because it takes me back to the Garden of Eden. And at some point we'll segue to what is the remedies for control, right? And this is a little sample, because I was like, when you texted me this morning, we were talking the other day about control. I was like, yeah, what's the remedy to that? And people say faith and trust in God, which it is. Okay, that's the short answer, right? But then I went to what my brain went to is the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve were told, here's this incredible garden, enjoy it. Just don't eat of that tree over there. Don't worry about it. Just don't even worry about it. Well, that's a trust thing now. Can Adam and Eve trust that what God provided is enough, that God will provide? Do they trust in his character? And then when Satan shows up and says, no, you can't trust him, take it into your own hands. That was a temptation to take control instead of trusting, and it was the devil's deal. And the problem is that as it's the devil's deal, the more I crave it, the more it betrays me. The more that because that's your self-sabotage. The more I try to be a control person, and anybody who's listening, if you're the control person, you may not even recognize it, first of all. But if you recognize control people, they're miserable to be around because they're so anxious all the time, or they're so this or that, and that, or you feel controlled by them. Another way that I see control, because this came up with some guys in our men's group the other day, oftentimes anger is related to control, which is why they say that anger is often rooted in fear. And so when someone feels out of control, they resort to anger as a way to gain control over people, gain control over circumstances, or whatever. So if you struggle with anger issues, you probably struggle with control issues, which means you probably struggle with fear issues. They're all connected.
My dad was so good at that. You were talking about your dad. My dad was not an anxious guy, at least that I ever saw. He was a guy that I said it at you were at his service, and I kind of just said that I don't know that I ever, in my memory, remember him having a bad day. It wasn't like he was, zippity-doo-dah every day, but he wasn't ever. And just now I'm sitting here thinking the root of that is that he always used to say, control what you can control and don't worry about the rest. And he was a coach, which a coach part of your job is to control the game, control the lineup, control the game plan, control who goes in and out, substitution patterns, control the referees. So the fact that he was that and yet didn't have an obsession with fear at all and really with control makes me envious of the fact that he kind of had that cornered a little bit. And I'm not good at that. And I don't know why I didn't, of all the great traits that I'd like to think that he passed me because he was a great man. I don't know why that one got lost, or I didn't pick up on it as well because I'm not that way. And as I've said before, I don't know that I always, and so you talked about your dad being tragically killed in an automobile. When I think back at a lot of relatively calm and very easy years for me, probably too much so, in getting into the industry I was getting into broadcasting, got a job right out of college I didn't deserve, really, in radio with a lot of other experienced guys around me, and I wasn't experienced, and I got it anyway. And then went from that, just a natural progression, right? And the Blazers came over, wanted to hire me in 99, and went, sure. I didn't apply. They just came and said, come work. 2 or 3 years of that, working in WNBA, doing a bunch of TV shows. All of a sudden, I'm the play-by-play guy for an NBA team. I do that, and all the way through the 2016 playoffs. Yeah, it was tough life, wrought with some guilt from being in hotel rooms and being on the road, and the pressures of at that time being on League Pass, and we were on League Pass International a lot of times, so knowing that you're getting texts from some guy in Zimbabwe who didn't like the way you said something, and we got those, and it just happened. But all the way until, so then, but here's the other thing. I thought I was seeking the Lord then, and I was, you and I were close then, like now, and, you started doing the Blazer team chaplain stuff, and you're around, everything's kind of going pretty well, but then the job loss, then the reinvention, what I'm going to do now. On the heels of that, my wife gets breast cancer. When everybody said it was nothing, all the doctors, it's not, well, it was. and I've talked about this before on this podcast, so I'm sorry, but I'm going to rehash this because it has a point. And so that was a worst case scenario, and not worst case scenario. It was something far worse than I thought it was going to be, or thought that we were told by experts it was going to be. Very nervous time, no control in that.
Yeah.
So then not only am I at that position, with my job and coming to a point where always having a fear, which I shouldn't have had, that I would lose that job, because a lot of guys do. That's a very transitional industry. I mean, it happens. They always say, if you haven't been fired, you haven't done anything. Well, I found that out. So, but having that happen at the point where I'd never thought it would, but in the back of my mind, I was like, that could happen. And people saying, yeah, you're crazy. And then I could go back to them and say, okay, was I crazy? Because that just happened. Same thing with her breast cancer. Then my dad, not that long after that. So what I'm trying to say is, and then her dad, right after that, like 2 years after that, her dad gets something fairly mild, but then passes away. So boom, 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 right in a row in a relatively short amount of years, which blew my fear factor out of the water, which was already bad to begin with. And the control that went with it, which I always had the illusion I had some. You'd think I would, and I'm maybe on the track of trying to get better, and certainly my walk with the Lord is much stronger than it ever was, probably because of these things. Yeah. And not out of desperation necessarily either, but out of maturity and out of experience. But I would like to think that through the experience of those things and having no control, and maybe having some scenarios where, and I don't want to use the term again, worst case scenario, because they weren't. Well, with my dad and her dad, yes,
some of them did.
They were, definitely. Things that we hadn't even thought about. Dad had one day where he had a confusing thought. Oh, okay, well, that's not that big of a deal. He is 83, but he's fine. He played golf that morning and then drove to Home Depot or whatever. He's fine. 3 weeks later, he's gone. And it's like, how did that happened? I had never, in all my fear and a lot of my illogical fear, never would have thought of that. So the fact that all that stuff happened relatively quickly did a number on my fear, did a number on my control. So it would stand to reason then you would think I would get worse in that department in terms of wanting to control my environment, control the safety of my kids. And then we have kids around us now. Gosh, for some reason, the last couple of months there have been car accidents and kids killed, and we know several. And some kids are in the hospital now that we don't know personally. Friends of friends know them, so we get the updates on them all the time. But I don't know how that gets better other than your faith gets stronger and you become at least at ease to the extent that you don't have any control. And maybe that's the lesson there for me, and maybe that's where I need to have more maturity and more development in that area, that you can do everything right, which I think I've tried to do in my job. I'm always early, always stayed late, worked my butt off, sacrificed, but at the end of the day, I didn't have any control over it, lost it anyway. So that should all be lessons, you would think. And if I'm healthy and on the right track spiritually, it should diminish the fear that I have. But I'm not sure that always works out that way. No. And I'm not sure what to do with that. And here I am with you all the time at church every week, which I love. It doesn't mean you have to go every week, and reading what I can and doing daily devotional. So I am getting better, I think, but my gosh, is that an anchor on my neck? And I want to get better at it. And I have friends who live in fear like I do. And I was in a conversation on a text feed the other night, really late at night, with a good friend, and he was saying the same thing. How do I shake this fear that I have about the world, about the election, about Israel, Iran, about all these things, about cyber attacks? And the way I started this, power going out, and prepping, bugging out, and prepping gives us some kind of measure of control that we think we're going to have over a situation. It's kind of a good example.
It's a great example
of something that we think we can then have control of. And it's like what I said a minute ago. I always thought that if I worried enough, I haven't worried enough about that today. If I worry a little bit more, and if I go through every possible outcome a little bit more, and if I obsess on those, that'll give me some measure of control. Well, that's BS. All it does is make you a lunatic
I know.
and a worrywart.
And that's where gosh, man, that I struggle with the same thing though too, because it circles back to, again, all those things we care about, and we want to. There are certain outcomes that we're always hopeful for, and this is where hope is attached to control, because we want to be people of hope. And so, like, when you go through what you did with your family, your dad, your father-in-law, Shelly's cancer, the job, it was like bam, 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 bam. I think we get traumatized by those things personally. And that's a hard thing for us as men to probably acknowledge that, like when my dad, just an example, I'm 22 years old. I didn't cry because I thought crying was weakness. No one told me that, dude, that's dysfunctional, man. Now, I did eventually, because I later found out, no, I should be free to do that. And I've worked through that, and I did. I worked through all those emotions, but at the same time, those things affect us to where we start looking and going, what if, and all those what if scenarios. And, the statistics come out and they tell us, say 90%, 80%, whatever it is, majority of the things we stress and worry about don't actually end up happening. But you and I have sat here and talked about, what about when they did? We've had this conversation so many times where people say, don't worry about stuff. Most of the time, those things don't happen.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm like, but the things I worried about did actually happen.
I explained that to a friend the other day when I'd like to think that I haven't always been a pessimist, but I've been a realist.
Yeah. I
like optimists. I like those optimists that are, oh my gosh, everything is, and then I'm like, I don't want to I'm not going to, rain on that, but I am going to shed some realism to it. But what I worry about is that it's become pessimistic because I'm chasing that control over it.
Exactly.
And what that turns into, I think, in my case, what that pessimism turns into is anxiety.
That's exactly it.
And we choose to hold on to, and this is what I do, we choose to hold on to that anxiety with tightly closed hands, as if the tighter we hold on to it, the more control we'll have. But what happens is that fear spirals out of control, and the threat there is then we lose heart.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't want to get to that point.
No, that's exactly it. Somebody said recently, I read it, that control comes at a cost. And so if I am so wound tight and determined to be in control of things, there's a cost to the illusion of that control, which is what you just talked about. And the cost is to my sanity, the cost is to my peace, the cost is
people around you.
Oh, exactly. Relationships. So a control person, it's costly. And again, it's an illusion anyway. So, and that doesn't mean preparing and planning, wisdom. We're not talking about that. There's a place for looking at things and going, hey, let's be prepared. Let's have some money set aside for savings and set aside for car repair. We're not talking about wisdom. That there's a place for looking at things and being prepared, like car insurance, life insurance. My dad didn't have life insurance, left my mom nothing. Poor guy didn't know. Nobody told him, hey, you should have life insurance. So that's unfortunate. And the first thing I did at 22 years old, went and got a life insurance plan for me and my young family at the time. So for me, though, it's, okay, what's the remedy to this control mechanism that we're trying to always predetermine outcomes that we want to see happen? And I think it's because we have hopeful ideas or visions and dreams for things. For instance, you start a family and you go, oh, man, there's a dream, there's a hope, a vision to go, this is what I would love to see our family become. And we're all going to love each other. We're all going to go to vacations together and Disneyland, and we're going to have Christmas vacations. And it's honestly, if you look at Chevy Chase is a perfect example of this. I think his character and all the National Lampoon Vacation stuff. What is it? He was an idealist, a dreamer. But you look at it, it was around his family. And there's some comedy, of course, to it. That's what made it funny. But here's a guy who, he always just wanted to do something great for his family. And I think for us, we oftentimes have a dream for our lives. And what happens is fear threatens to be the axe to the glass. And the next thing you know, we look at that axe over here and go, and that thing is going to swing over and shatter the glass of this dream. But glass is the right word because glass is fragile. Our lives are fragile. And I think that's the hardcore reality, is that you can't really be fully in control of something as fragile as we really are. And I don't mean that like it's how some people use them, fragile and fragility. I'm just saying this life is broken. This life that we're in, there's sin. Nobody can guarantee health. How do you mitigate cancer? Well, yeah, there's some things you can do with some cancers. There's no guarantee. What about a tragic car accident like my dad? No guarantee. Doesn't matter how many seatbelts you have. Doesn't matter how many this or that. And so you do come to grips with the reality that we are fragile people living in a fragile world. And what do I do with that? Well, my job is probably more fragile, as you learned. Everything is really technically kind of fragile around us. And so then we look at that, whether subconsciously or we're very aware of it, but subconsciously we're always trying to go, how do I bubble wrap this fragile part of my life, my parenting, my family, relationships, job security, health, whatever. So we constantly just want to bubble wrap that. That's our control mechanism. And that's how because it's fear management. So at the end of the day, we said earlier, okay, well, the answer to that is you got to put your trust somewhere. What I tend to do is you're going to put trust anywhere. Trust is the solution, the way we manage that fear and manage those threats. And I either trust myself and what I'm trying to put in place, trust in my control, or I have to trust God. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have responsibilities. There are things that we should do. We don't just get to throw our hands up and live a reckless life and just go, I'm just trusting God. No, you're living like a fool, and there's consequences, and trusting God doesn't always bail you out of that. So we're not talking about that, reckless living. We're talking about either I'm putting my trust in God or trust in myself. And so what does trust in God look like? And especially when it comes to control. There's another C word called contentment that fits into this. We all know the verse, Steph Curry's favorite verse, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Everybody loves that verse. And in fact, we were just talking about the other night. I just saw him at a Blazer game a couple nights ago and handed him the Vintage Masculinity book and said, hey, I hope this encourages you as a man, because he cares deeply about his family. And anyway, so we just had a great exchange. But I love his life verse, but most people don't know the context of his life verse. So I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. If you back up, Paul says, I've learned the secret of being content. And secret, I think, is the right word. It's a secret. What is a secret? A secret is something that's hidden that you discover. Many of us have never discovered what contentment is. And I used to think contentment was a weak word.
I'm hearing it means no fear, no control.
Yeah.
And being comfortable with that.
Exactly. I thought content was throw your hands up, give up. Like, well, I just got to be content with this sucky circumstance. I just got to be content. Like almost a delusional self-talk when people say God is good all the time God's good, and he is. That's a true statement. But sometimes we say it as like we're psyching ourselves up into believing something that doesn't give us permission to actually go, God is good and all the time he is good, but this sucks. I don't need to sprinkle that like a fairy dust over my bad situation, like some mantra that's going to talk me out of a reality that things are hard. So contentment is not denial. So that's what I always thought. I thought contentment was deny the problem and just keep telling yourself God is good, even in this situation. But contentment, it comes from the word contents, like a container. So I always think of like a water container. And this was where this gets really into the remedy. So if you're sitting there going, okay, how do I deal with this? If you're out in the middle of a desert and it's hot, it's scorching hot, you're thirsting, you are dehydrated, your back of your throat is on fire, and you end up sitting there crawling through the sand, and somebody comes to your rescue, and they look at you going, what are you doing? You had a container with you filled with pure, cold, refreshing water. Why didn't you drink some? What are you doing? You could have saved yourself miles ago by drinking from this refreshing water. So we would say, man, what a foolish person to have had the secret to not dying in the desert, but you didn't drink from that. So when Paul said, I've learned the secret of being content, he was saying that putting our trust in God is not just some psycho weird sort of thing we do. It's the process of drinking of the faithfulness of God. When I trust in God, it's a sip of refreshing water that where I'm putting my hope, I'm putting my problems into his hands. And he may require some action on my side, but the point of it is that I'm looking to him as the source of whatever I need, that he will provide. He will be the container. So Paul says, I've learned to be content whether I have a little or a lot. So if things are going great, I don't have to live with the fear it's all going to come crashing down and try to control that. If I don't have anything, I don't have to try to scurry around and try to control the circumstances to get a better life. What he said is, it doesn't matter the circumstances. I don't have to control anything. I have to be content. And content is another word for not just trusting God. It's drinking. I just want to do this real quick. And there's a chapter in the book, Vintage Masculinity, where we talk about what wells do you drink from. The wells you drink from become the water and the drink you offer other people. And just to give kind of an example, for instance, if I drink from the well of worry, I'm offering other people anxiety. That's the drink I'm giving them.
Wow.
If I drink from the well of anger, I'm giving them a drink of terror. If I drink from the well of pride, I'm giving other people a drink of disunity because I'm making it about me, not them. If I drink of the well of jealousy, I'm offering them a drink of competitiveness where they have to be better than me. Here's another one. If I drink from the well of shame, I'm offering other people my criticism, a drink of criticism. I become critical. And you can go on and on and on. If I drink from the well of fear, it's right here. If I drink from the well of fear, then I'm offering them control. It's a negative drink. It's my control mechanism because I'm fear-based. That's what the drink I'm offering. I'm not offering anybody peace. I'm not offering them a drink of rest. I'm not offering a drink of hope. I'm not offering them any of those good drinks because I'm drinking from the wrong well myself. So contentment comes back to, again, what well are you drinking from? And
wow, that's a good illustration.
So drinking of God's promises, again, doesn't mean Shelly doesn't get cancer. My dad doesn't get killed in a car accident. Like, trusting God does not mean we get a hall pass from the trials of life. What it means is that when I put my life into his hands, I say, God, I trust you. I believe in you. I'm depending on you. Then I'm actually drinking from a well of faith and hope. And that replenishes my soul in the midst of the circumstances, but it makes me offer a better drink to other people. So, because we talked at the beginning of this podcast that if I'm a control person, it affects other people.
Oh.
So what I drink from, if I'm a reacting person or responding person, do I react out of fear? Therefore, I'm a control reactionary, or do I respond to situations not out of this control thing, but do I respond with poise and peace, collectiveness, rest, wisdom? Or am I just constantly reacting out of anger, reacting out of fear, reacting out of control? And it all comes back to, am I content? Again, content doesn't mean throw up my arms and go, I give up. It means I'm trusting and I'm going to drink now from God's promises, his faithfulness. So God, whatever I'm going to go through, whether you take the circumstance away or you give me the power to go through it, you will provide whatever I need. Therefore, I'd rather trust you for what you're going to provide than trusting what I'm trying to provide in the situation.
I would have never thought of Philippians 4:13 as an answer to control and fear. Fear a little bit, but not in the way you described. It's a very well-known verse. As you said, Steph's got it on his shoes, and you see it a lot. That's a really good answer. And not just that one, but what preceded it, as you just said.
And that's why he
what
says,
led to it.
after I've learned the secret of content, which is the remedy to control, he says, I can do all things now.
I'm free.
And he says, I can do all things. I am free. And then he says, through him who strengthens me. So what you're doing is you're surrendering control into him. That's what contentment means. And that surrenders drinking. Okay, God, I'm drinking from your well, not mine. And what I'm going to drink from you now on my end is I'm going to be replenished with peace, hope, strength, provision, power, whatever I need. You've already predetermined that situation, what you're going to provide. So I'm looking to him as the source, like a spring of water that will sustain me through it. And therefore, I'm going to put the control back into your provision, not in me trying to provide for myself.
I was thinking as you were talking a minute ago about family, and you were talking about Clark Griswold and kids, and I think and I hated this, but I remember the feeling of being at the hospital for the birth of both of my kids, of the excitement, the preparation. It's all exciting, but then you're holding this little thing.
I know, gosh.
And you're going, oh man. And then the funny part, and this is very cliche, and if you don't have kids yet, you laugh at people who, it has been in movies and whatever else, when you're driving your baby home from the hospital, you're going 5 miles an hour with the hazard lights on in the bike lane.
Yep.
Because you don't want to get in a wreck. Yep. And I did that.
Oh.
And I remember especially with my son, and because he was my first, and putting him in the back seat and then white knuckling the steering wheel and it was a short drive home. It was a couple miles, but driving home with this, I don't want to say fear. I want to say responsibility, or maybe new responsibility of something you had nobody could ever prepare you adequately for. But I thought about that. But then I also thought about it in this way, which is not so funny or light. How was it for you? Your dad gets killed in a car accident that was completely out of his control. And it was a worst case scenario. So when your kids got their licenses and took off for the first time, or went on a drive to Central Oregon, or a drive how did you handle that?
Not well, still don't. And I think this is where we have to get gut honest, and this is when we talk about trusting God. What makes it hard was when my dad was killed in a car accident, I always believed, and I still believe, so I believe with all my heart that God is in control. Now, that's a weird statement to say, because the Bible talks about God is in control. What bad things happen for bad, God means for good. I get that. All things work for his good. Those verses, they sound really good on a fridge or at Hobby Lobby, but what you're telling me, and let's just be honest, you're telling me that at any moment God can intervene. Yeah, I believe that. I believe he can intervene because he does. And every time I hear somebody tell a story, like, oh man, you won't believe this situation, and it was life and death, but God stepped in and protected us, and I just go, F you. If I'm honest, like this was back when I was an angry 22-year-old with God. I just F you, because what you just said was that God saved your person, but he didn't save mine. So therefore, it actually makes me more angry that God is in control, because now he's choosing, and he just chose. I could go the other route, which is, well, God's not really in control. He just lets mankind choose, and then bad things happen, and he sits back.
There's free will.
And then I go, well,
it all gets put in motion.
Yeah. That's jacked up, because then that's a view of God that he's not God anymore. A view of God that he's not in control, that he lets things happen and his hands are tied. That's a scarier view. So I'm left with two options. I'm left with a God that is in control, but there's a mystery behind why he rescues directly and sometimes he doesn't. Can I live with that kind of God?
Oof, that's a whole nother podcast.
It is. Or would I rather live with a God who's not in control and he's powerless? And that might explain why bad things happen to good people. But boy, that's a jacked up view of God. And so what I had to come to grips with is, can I trust a God that doesn't make sense to me? That he's still in control.
At least now.
At least, and thank you for that. Because I'm going to circle back to a passage in the Bible that helped me wrestle with this. And this all helps us, because people will say, Mike, how do you trust a God that chooses sometimes or allows this to happen, but then he intervenes here, this person gets healed, and we celebrate it, but then this person doesn't get healed. And so how do you reconcile trusting a God that doesn't make sense like that? And I go, that's the best fair question you could ever ask. And there's a mystery behind that. The Bible says his ways are not our ways. And the Bible says all things work for the good of those he loves. I go, well, define good. If we define good as everything has to work to my explanation and to my desired outcomes, well, then God and I are going to have issues. But there might be a greater good that I don't see. And there might be a greater good that isn't even revealed. So that takes me to the book of Hebrews, where there's a chapter and it lists all these men and women through the Bible, and it's called the heroes of the faith. And it lists like man after woman, and it talks about all their struggles and trials, but they trusted, they had faith. And at the very end of that, it says they believed in God's promises and his character, even when it wasn't fulfilled in their lifetime. Because what they were doing is they realized that their life is connected to things bigger than themselves.
That's playing the long game.
It's playing the long game. And so do I have, again, this comes back to trust issues.
Wow.
Can I trust God not because of the circumstances? Because that will jack you up. That's conditional. Or do I trust him because of his character? And his character will do one of two things. It'll be mysterious. And you have to be okay with the mystery of God. You have to be okay with, why did he heal this person, not this person? Why was this person saved from a car accident? This person wasn't. I can't answer those questions. I'm not going to try to. So I have to be okay with mystery. But here's what I will guarantee. I will guarantee this, and I'll stake my whole faith on this, that no matter the circumstance, that God will be what you need. He will be everything you need. He'll comfort you if you're in a season of loss, which is what I went through. He will strengthen you when you are overwhelmed. If you're losing a job and your fear is to try to control the safety of some financial security, and as much as that's fun to have and good to have and okay to have, he will always be my provider, no matter what. He'll always be my provider. May not always provide what I want. May not always give me the lifestyle I want. And that's okay. But God will always provide for me. So trust is not in him fixing all my circumstances the way I would wish he would. I can trust his character. And I think that's what the content means, is I've learned the secret to be content. I've learned the secret to drink from the drink he hands me for this moment. So if I'm going through a season and for some reason I'm going through loss because you lost someone, and you're going, God, how do I trust you? This isn't fair. And he's reaching out to you going, I know, but here's my comfort. Drink of my comfort. You're in a season where, how financially, how are we going to get through this? And in our life, we've gone through so many ups and downs financially. I mean, my wife and I are just talking about this. We just had to pay for an amazing wedding, which those things can cost. Both our kids were in the ER this last year, in the last 5 months. So massive hospital bills. My wife's car just found out last week that it's toast, and it shouldn't be. It's 120,000 miles on a Toyota Highlander, and the mechanic says it's toast. Sorry.
What?
Engine's done. You need a whole new vehicle. And then her dad, as we get that news, we're getting her on a plane to go to a hospital in Boise to be with her dad, who we didn't know if how he was doing. It was pretty rough there. So it just kind of like all this stuff is hitting, right? And you're going, okay, I want to control. How do you control the doctors? How do you control the finances? How do you control da-da-da-da-da? And Jesus is like, hey, Mike, hold on. What well are you going to drink from right now? Are you going to drink from the well of control, the well of anger, the well of fear? Or are you going to trust me? I've always been there for you. Even if things are hard, I will comfort you in loss. I will provide for you if the car breaks down. I will provide for you with the hospital. But all I'm saying is, He's always offering us the right drink. I have to choose to drink from it. That's what trust is. It's trusting that he's good, even in the non-good things, the unfair things. And that's the secret of content. And when we learn that secret, that's the secret for overcoming control.
And worry.
And worry.
And fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and, if it sounds like I'm a little bit being self-serving here, it's because those are my biggest struggles. And I have friends point that out to me.
Yep.
My wife points it out to me. And I admittedly, as I said it to a friend last night, and I went to the high school football game, and then afterwards there was a Young Life event with kids, and I was in the corner kind of just texting a few friends, and we were talking about this very thing. And I said to him, he said something about, why don't you listen to yourself, dude? On the podcast, and I said, I could preach a good game. I said, but I don't know, do as I say, not as I do. And that's typical in this case. And we all have things we struggle with. Those have always been mine. And the worry part, what I said earlier, thinking that if you worry enough that you somehow have some self-control over it, it's an illusion. And I got to get to that point. But the way I got to get to that point is the way Paul talks about in Philippians. That's it. That's the answer to this. And I know we always like to, in these podcasts, when we lay out an issue that we're all nodding about and going, yeah. I always love to have a remedy, some kind of remedy. You're very good at that. And that's what you do. And that's why your sermons are good. That's a good remedy. And I had never associated that piece of scripture, so well known. And like you said, at Hobby Lobby, on the engraving, on the thing you give somebody for Christmas, on Steph Curry's shoe during NBA games. I never thought of it in this way, and how that relates directly to worry, fear, and control. But it really does.
It does. And the other thing, because I see this in you, that I think is something that is incredibly admirable. It's actually part of the role of being a protector. And I look at you and your love for your family. You always put your family first. You are an absolute incredible father and husband. And I think that good husbands and fathers carry the weight of being the protector and provider.
Yeah.
And part of that is our job. So that is our job. Like, that is part of the assignment, is to be a protector and provider. So, because you asked earlier what happens when the kids now are older and they're driving and going on the road trips and flying around the world. And I'm like, I can't be there to protect them anymore. Like, I wish I could. And it kind of starts stirring in me like, I can't. And it comes back to, at some point, I do have a role. You have a role, and you're great at that. You're an incredible provider, protector of your family. And I think at some point we're just limited, though. We can't be the ultimate providers. We can't be the ultimate protectors. And that's that trusting God is like, okay, God, I'll play my part, but there's only so far I can go. I'll never be the full provider, full protector. I'm limited in that. And so, God, I'm going to have to trust that you're going to have to protect them way beyond I could ever do that. You're going to have to provide way beyond I could ever provide. So in some ways, just a kind of a word of encouragement, that sometimes our control and fear comes from those responsibilities we want to do, but we just can't be the ultimate source. I was going to say one quick other thing. There's a whole chapter section in Vintage Masculinity that actually outlines how to trust God. And actually practically, like, there's a whole side. I'm not going to read it to you, but there's a whole section here, like literally how to it right here. It's called How to Trust God. And there's just like right here, there's 10 ways we can trust God. That's and good. How to do that. And what does that actually look like practically? Not just some sort of like esoteric kind of thing that's floating around out there, but practically every day. But if you're interested in getting Vintage Masculinity, it talks about the wells we drink from, trusting God. You can get it at the church at Grace Chapel. You can swing by there. You can respond to the podcast through our app and website. And there's a section on there where you can connect to us, contact us, and just say, can you guys ship me a book? And they're $20, and we'll figure out what postage is, but we can get it shipped out to you. Or you can just swing by the church if you're in the area.
I love being able to talk about the book, and I love being by the way, nobody's profiting off this. Just
not a single dime.
know
We don't
that
make
this
anything.
this is not about a book tour to raise money. This is just, it's really good because it's really practical. I was going to tell you this too, and you probably know this because my wife told me this. She's in some massive like women's Bible studies. They're going through this book.
The ladies are?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. No
Did you know that?
I didn't know that. No, I had no idea.
She said the other day, she showed me a text feed, and she said, somebody talked about the book. You had mentioned it. we talked about it on the podcast. We talked about it. You talked about it in a sermon. And she showed me a text feed where all these ladies are getting it, wanting it, reading it, going through it.
No way.
So it's not just a knuckle dragging, beat your chest dude, in control of your own world and hunting and fishing. There's certainly, we talk about a lot of that stuff, but it isn't. And if the title throws you off in terms of these days with people getting triggered in this but-her society we live in, that's not what this is. This is talking about where your identity lies and who gives you that identity. That's, not that there's going to be a short slogan or summary of what this book is, but it's hitting people from a lot of different ways. And I love the fact that you're blowing through copies so fast, showing, again, there is such a strong desire for things like this. So great job, as always. We appreciate you spending time with us, as always, on Vertical Pursuit, and we will see you on our next episode. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast, comment, or message us, and check out our website at verticalpursuit.org. Download the VP app and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.